Thank you for coming out tonight. My name is Linda Bridwell. I am the Executive Director of the Kentucky Public Service Commission. So we appreciate you coming out for the public comment period in the meeting that we're having tonight in case number 2022-00402. It is the LG&E case that with their retirement and new generation of their coal-fired plant. So the other speakers tonight will get into a lot more detail about that, but I'm going to go over a little bit on let me make sure I've got too many things in my hand. Okay, I'm going to let you finish. So I'm going to go over the agenda for this evening and kind of the process. One of the things that I want to make sure that you understand is that tonight we will make a very brief presentation about the case at a very high level. So if you were under the impression that we were coming out tonight to give you a lot of details about what was being presented, we used to do that, and everyone said, oh, it sounds like you're working for the utility. That is not why we're here tonight. What we're here tonight is to hear comments from you, the public. So we will make a very high-level presentation. Then we will have a question and answer period that you may ask us, the staff, about any of the process questions. We will not get into a back and forth engagement about what's been filed. We won't be answering questions about anything that's been filed in the case, anything substantial that's been filed in the case. Then after that, it's your opportunity to provide public comment to the commissioners. So they have come down to Madisonville, and I'm sorry, I'm from Lexington, so that we've come to Western Kentucky to hear your comments, to hear public comment from about what LG&E and KU have proposed in this case. So I want to make sure that everyone understands this is not your only opportunity for public comment tonight. So we have had two other hearings. One was in Lexington 2 weeks ago, then one again in Harlan. There is one on Wednesday night in Louisville. Plus tomorrow night, we are having a virtual public comment period. You can contact the PSC through the website, sign up virtually. You get a link and you will be able to offer public comment. That is not your last opportunity. In addition to that, if you would like to make a public comment before the hearing starts, on the very first day of the hearing, which begins on the 22nd of August, on that Tuesday, you may either come to Frankfort at the beginning of the public hearing, or you can register with us and make a public comment virtually. Again, the same process. Then, in addition to that, at any point, if you don't feel comfortable being on video or getting up in front of people, but you have some very strong opinions that you want to comment, you may either go to our website and enter a public comment. There's a form that you just fill out. You put the case number, your name, what your comments are, or you may do it the old-fashioned way and write a letter, and we'll, at the end of the presentation, we'll make sure that you have not only our website, but also our mailing address, so you can enter public comments that way. And all of those comments go into the record for all of the parties to review. So I want everyone to understand that we appreciate everyone coming out tonight, but this is not your last opportunity. If you go home and you think about it, or if you have a neighbor that said, well, I didn't know anything about that, you say, well, there's still an opportunity to comment. So with that, we will, you want to go forward. Just introduction about the Public Service Commission. We were created in 1934. It is a 3-member administrative body that we have quasi-judicial duties. And what does that mean? The Public Service Commission acts almost like the judge in an administrative process, that the utility makes an application. Other parties may file in the case, and then the commissioners will rule on a decision at the end of that. And that's part of why we can't really discuss back and forth engagement on substance in the case. We regulate more than 1,100 utilities in the state of Kentucky, including water, gas, electric, some telephone, sewer. We're funded by an assessment paid by all of the utilities, and it's based on the utilities' annual gross revenues. So our primary goal from the legislative, our mission from the legislature is every utility shall furnish adequate, efficient, and reasonable service at fair, just, and reasonable rates. So that's the mission of the Public Service Commission and their directive from the legislature. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over here and we're going to tag team on this a little bit.
Thank you. I'm going to step over here. I don't think I should block anybody's view, but if I am, just let me know. I'm Nancy Vinsel. I'm General Counsel at the Commission, and I want to talk a little bit about the legal process that we're following. So this case, as Linda said, it's electric generation, retirement, and then replacement capacity. And that is a legal process. It starts when an application is filed that includes financial information, testimony, whatever information needed to support whatever is being requested. After that, there's a chance for persons to intervene as parties in the case. And in this case, we'll go over the list later, but we have, I believe it's 9 intervening parties in this case. Throughout the process, there's something called, we call it request for information. Basically, staff and parties are asking questions of other parties to flesh out the case record to get more information as we go along. There will be a hearing. As Linda said here, there's a hearing that begins on Tuesday, August 22nd. After the hearing, the parties will have an opportunity to file briefs if they choose. There will be a final decision made in the final order. In this case, that order will go out on or before November 6th. That date, I was asked once before about how we picked that date. It's a statutory date. There's a 10-month date for a particular part of this application. We have to issue an order within 10 months of the application being filed. This application was deemed filed on January 6th. Moving that out, it's November 6th. Oh, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I really want to emphasize we're open to public comments. We have various ways that you can make public comments. Please don't hesitate. Please make public comments. That's very helpful for us. Let me start talking about retirement of generation. In this last legislative session this spring, the legislature passed and became enacted a new law that covered retirement of fossil fuel-fired electric generation. In this case, we're really talking primarily about coal, but there are some natural gas units also being retired. This law went into effect March 29th. So after the application was initially filed, LG&E-KU had to file more information, another application in a case that was consolidated into this one. A couple things that I do want you to know. So in the new law, and it was codified in KRS 278-264 for anybody who likes to look up the law, the Commission has 180 days to process the application. That may seem like a lot of time, but given the complexity of issue, it's not. So that's why we have a lot of information going, and we've done a lot of data requests. Commission staff has asked for information 6 different times, 6 different major data requests from LG&E-KU. In the final order, by statute, what the Commission can do, we can approve the request to retire the generation, we can approve it with conditions to modify it, or we can deny it. The last bit I want to make, I think I lost it. You can hear me? Thank you. By statute, there's a rebuttable presumption against retiring electric units. Rebuttable presumption simply means there's certain evidence the utilities have to file to overcome that presumption against retiring it. Just because a utility files something doesn't mean that's the end of it. The Commission's job as the judge in this case is to make a decision about that evidence. So some of the things that have to be filed, the replacement generation has to be dispatchable. It has to, make sure I read this because I don't want to go against it, maintain or improve reliability and resilience of the electric system, and maintain a minimum reserve capacity established by Utilities Reliability Coordinator. I know that part of that is like, well, what does that mean? Some of these are defined in the statute, some are not. They're all issues here, so I'm going to give you a very high-level sense of it. Dispatchable is just fundamentally, can that facility adjust its production? Reliability is defined in the statute as adequate electric generation capacity in a quality, quantity, and at a time a customer demands it. Resilience is the ability to quickly and effectively respond to and recover from an event that impacts reliability. And that minimum reserve capacity, think of it like a cushion, an excess cushion, sort of like an extra savings account. The utilities know how much electric capacity they're going to need to serve their customers. Then they have to have a certain amount more, just in case. The other information that a utility has to provide here, I'm just going to read from this one and try to explain it a bit. There has to be sufficient evidence that there will be no net incremental cost recovered from ratepayers that could be avoided by continuing to operate the facility in compliance with applicable law. Applicable law being state and federal law. That the decision to retire the fossil fuel generating facility can't be the result of a federal agency financial incentives or benefits. And also, the utility has to provide evidence of all known direct and indirect costs of retiring the unit and demonstrate that there will be cost savings if that unit is retired and replaced by another unit. I want to move on to that replacement generation. By law, before any utility can construct facilities, they have to get what's called a Certificate of Public Convenience and Necessity, or CPCN, from the Commission. The legal standards that are applied are need and absence of wasteful duplication. In the bigger picture, under another statute, a utility is required to provide adequate service to its customers. Part of adequate service includes making prudent investments in facilities. And when we're looking at a CPCN, when we say talk about need and wasteful duplication, we're looking at a larger context here. It will include things like keeping rates as low as possible. And the reason for that is because although rates aren't necessarily determined in a CPCN case and are not being determined here, if a CPCN is approved, that creates a presumption that it can be recovered in future rates because it was a reasonable expense. With need, I know what is need? Well, need is defined in that sense of, do you need to have this facility to provide adequate service? I'm going to move on to the next one because there's some overlap between need and wasteful duplication. Wasteful duplication is talking about avoiding excess investment. One of the pieces of that is looking at reasonable alternatives. We have to make sure that all utilities are looking, not just deciding this is what we want to do and this is the outcome, so this is what how we're going to shape our application. They have to show us they've considered reasonable applications. And this is the most reasonable, least cost example. I really want to hit hard on that reasonableness, and then I'm going to turn this over. I always tell people to think of it this way. I work about 45 miles. I live 45 miles from my work. Well, technically, the least cost way to get to work is if I walked. But that isn't reasonable when you think about the time that it involves. Now, I know that's a pretty far stretch, admittedly, but that's one way to think of reasonable. Reasonableness is in context with what the alternatives were and the cost. With that, I will turn it over to my colleague, William Costin.
Thank you, Nancy. Again, my name is William Costin, and I am the Director of Financial Analysis here at the PSC. And I'm going to just go over a real high level, kind of descriptive of what the utility has petitioned before the commission. Here we go. So in its petition, LG&E and KU, they have proposed to retire 4 coal electric generating units and 3 natural gas simple cycle combustion turbine generating units, and they're proposing for those retirements to occur between 2024 and 2027. According to the utilities, all of the 7 units are at near the end of their useful life, and it would require significant investment to continue to operate these units in compliance with changing environmental laws, and that the investment would no longer be cost effective. That is what the utility has stated. And with that, they're also proposing to replace these units with 2 new natural gas combined cycle facilities, 2 solar facilities, 1 battery storage facility, and 4 solar power purchase agreements. And they're planning for those to go into effect sometime between 2026 and 2028. Let me go back. The 4 units that the utility is proposing to retire the coal units are the E.W. Brown Unit 3, the Gent Unit 2, Mill Creek's Unit 1 and 2. The natural gas-fired units they're proposing to retire are the Hafling Units 1 and 2 and Patty Run Unit 12. So that is kind of a high level of their actual petition. As Nancy mentioned earlier, there are some intervening parties that are participating in this case, and I'm going to just go over those with you so you'll know who's participating. The Attorney General is participating in this case, and the Attorney General, they have an Office of Rate Intervention. The Attorney General is statutorily authorized to intervene in cases before the PSC, and they are charged with representing the customers and serve as the consumer advocates in these cases. In addition to the Attorney General, Walmart Incorporated is participating, the Kentucky Coal Association, the Kentucky Industrial Utilities Customers. There's joint interveners, which is made up by the Metropolitan Housing Coalition, the Kentuckians for the Commonwealth, Kentucky Solar Energy Society, and the Mountain Association. There's also the Metro Louisville and Lexington Fayette Urban County Governments, the Sierra Club, and the Mercer County Physical Court. So those are the 9 interveners that are participating in this case. So I'll turn it back over to Linda.
Okay, so what are our next steps? As I mentioned, there are 4 public meetings that we're taking comments in person. Those, in addition to the July 31st in Lexington, the August 3rd that was in Harlan, then tonight in Madisonville, and Wednesday night in Louisville. And then again, as I mentioned, tomorrow evening, we will be doing this exact same presentation, but we'll be doing it virtual from our office. And if someone wants to make a public comment, you can watch it without having to register. You can just get on the link on YouTube. But if you want to make a comment, you need to register with us, and that information is on our website, and people can connect and make their public comment at that point. So the hearing in Frankfort will begin at 9 a.m. on Tuesday, August 22nd. At the beginning of the very first day, on that Tuesday, anyone can make a public comment at that point. They can come to Frankfort and make the public comment in person, or they can register a day ahead of time. Again, in order to make a comment virtually at the start of the hearing, you have to register. As we've learned during COVID, you don't want people bombing into your meeting, so we do ask that you register with us so we know who's attempting to get onto the meeting. At that, the hearing is open to the public at our office, 211 Sauer Boulevard in Frankfort. And as Nancy mentioned, the final order will be entered into by November 6th, 2023. So at this point, now you can ask us, the three of us, questions about the process. If it's something we can answer, we will try and answer. If you're asking us, well, what are you all looking at? What are your opinions? Those are things that are about the substance of the case that we're not going to be able to answer tonight. So if you head down that road, we'll just say, I'm sorry, we can't answer that question, okay? So that's how we're going to work tonight. You can ask us questions about the process, or if you have something that we can hopefully answer at a high level. And then once we finish the question and answer, we're going to have about 2 minutes to move the mic around in the camera. And then the chairman and vice chairman will come up here, and it will be your opportunity. They won't respond to you. He'll remind you again about that, but it will be your opportunity to make public comments at that time. So with that, this is the website if you need it. Our website, again, it's a little challenging sometimes to find how to get there, but you can reach out to our staff or email us, or there is a link on there that you can fill out an electronic form. The email address, if you want to just send it to the email, make sure that you put the case number and your name in it. And then our address, if you want to mail it in, is 211 Sauer Boulevard, Frankfort, Kentucky, 40601. So that ends our presentation part, and we are happy at this point to open it up to some questions if we can answer them. So before we get started, does anybody have any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Regarding the public information that's coming out of these hearings and meetings, I understand that the hearings are posted live on your site, correct? If there's an actual hearing. But if somebody wanted to share this information that's coming out in these meetings, is there a video live that's going to be shared on site?
Yes, so we are recording everything tonight, and the case record will have everything filed in it, and you'll be able to go back and watch the hearing, any of the public comment periods from the entire case record is on file, and that will include the videos. Yes, yes. And if you have any problems with that, reach out to our staff, and we can say, okay, this is how we can send you a link pretty quickly. What else? Yes, sir.
Yeah, the one thing that I saw up there about phasing out the coal-fired power plants going into solar and other kinds of replacements, I guess, for lack of a better word. Why is not replacing these outdated coal-fired generating plants? Why is that not an option? I don't know when the last time we've had a coal-fired plant built in the United States, but it's probably been a good while. Coal is the most dependable source of energy of anything, and nobody can dispute that. So why is that not in the mix?
Okay, that's a substance question that I can't answer. So, but if you would like to, let me just say, I hope you will, when we go into the public comment period, that you'll stand up, because if you have a question, the commissioners can't respond, but it may be something that they even haven't thought about, or they want to know what the public is asking. So if you'll hold, no need to apologize, but if you'll hold that and make sure you get up and during the public comment period, ask that question again. So what other questions? Anything else about the process? Well, let me start back here in the corner, and then I'll come to you. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, and all of the other parties to the case, everything that's been filed, the entire case record. If you search, there's under the commission tab, it'll say search records, and you enter the case number, and it'll have every single filing on there. So you can read to your heart's content through everything. Yes, sir. Thank you. We will be happy to help you. You can email us, you can call. We will try and walk you through. We keep reworking the website, but we know it's still a little bit difficult to get through. So, yes, ma'am.
I'm going to be the devil's. I feel this is a part of the green
again, those are not questions that we can answer tonight. And if you would mind sharing that with your public comment during the public comment period, I think that would be something that would be appropriate.
Question also, why is it we're just rush out everything else is, we got to do this over 2 or 3 years, maybe 4. Now we're rushing to get rid of something that's really still working pretty good. And I cannot see us giving up something that we've got for something that's really not very good, in my opinion. We can't put everything like the cars that were gonna be so good. We're finding out now that the batteries cost as much as a new one would cost.
So let me see if I can help. So the case itself, the process of the case and making a decision in the case is set under the statute, the new statute that was passed. It's required to be decided in 180 days. But now with that, if you go to the case record, the schedule for any of the retirements and all of that are as part of the case record. They're not all being immediately necessarily following the decision in the case. There's not necessarily the rush there. They talk about the timeline on the decisions to retire.
I am a senior citizen, and we're not gonna be able to pay this. We're doing well right now to pay for groceries. And here you want to do something that's, how many millions is it gonna be?
The utility has proposed $2 billion. At
Bill.
$2 billion.
Wow. What we could do with a little of that money right here. We're not gonna get any of it. In fact, we're gonna be putting it in a hole. I'm not gonna go any further. I'll get upset.
Well, if you would like to say anything further once you hear some of the public comments, feel free once you get up to the public comments. Okay. Yes, sir. Or yes, ma'am.
Why would we, as far as state, these grids that the power's on right now, we have blackout periods. And we're on coal and gas, and we can't keep up with the blackout periods in the cold, in the hot, in the most vulnerable time that there is for senior citizens, infants, children. I mean, why would we even consider doing away with our number one resource? Fix what we've got.
Okay.
Let me take this.
Okay.
So I appreciate the comment. So my name is Kent Chandler. I'm chairman of the commission. So I just want to be very clear about process one more time. Do you mind to turn I'm sorry, I can't see. So if you just give me 1 second to turn the projector off. So we're here because we want to hear your exact comments that you were just providing. We're going to get to that session part of the program in just a minute. Right now, Tripp and Nancy and Linda are available to answer questions that we cannot about the processing of the case. And so if there are no questions about the processing or what's left or where can we find the order, where can we find the case information, I'd like to learn more. If nobody has those types of questions, that's great. We just need to find that out so that we can move to the next portion of it and take your comments and your comments, and so that everybody can make sure they provide their input. The time now for the questions is not, why did they do this or why did they do that? We're here to try to rule on the case that's in front of us. They just are here to make sure that you all have an opportunity to get all the questions about the processing of the case answered, so that if you do want to go back and read more, you at least can start with a little bit of information as provided by the three folks who are basically experts on processing these cases. So please, if you didn't sign up to provide comments, I'll provide it in. Please hold your comments and we will take them and give everybody a chance to provide them. So I don't want to cut you off. I just want to make sure you know you have a chance. So are there any other questions about the processing of the case?
Okay, yes, and that was what I was trying to explain. The three commissioners serve essentially as the judge. They're the quasi-judicial, and that's why we've really segregated this. The three of us are staff members, so we're processing the case. The chairman and the vice chairman, who will introduce themselves, they will serve essentially as the judge in this case to make a decision on it. No, I will not be arguing anything. Kentucky Utilities, LG&E and Kentucky Utilities is making their presentation. The other parties in the case are making their presentation. We are staff support is all to the commissioners. So that's our role. So, yes, sir.
So as of this date, you don't know what the increase might be in the rate? And if so, who's gonna govern what that rate might be? Is it gonna be 80%? Is it gonna be 10%? Or what might that be?
So that would be something that would be probably explored in the case of the information being asked in the case. So do you want to add anything on that?
So this case won't decide a rate, but that would be part of what we're looking at in terms of the total cost of it. But we can't predict what the rate is. The rate would be decided in a different case in the future. LG&E KU cannot come in, they have a stay out from filing a rate case. The next time that they can come in to file a rate case is in the summer of 2025 for rates effective January 2026. So I hate to say to be continued, but that would be where a rate decision would be made. Does that help?
Yes, sir. So rates are usually decided, I think the last case that Kentucky Utilities did was what they call a forecasted test year. So they're looking at 1 year out, and we take an average of what the expenses and the capital investment is of that year. And no, so they come in just like this. They come in, they make an application, the staff, there will be interveners in that case, the staff reviews, and they're looking at, again, the standard, are they fair, just, and reasonable rates to provide efficient, adequate service? Oh, yes. Yes, that's usually one of the very first things asked is, okay, in the last case, how well did you do compared to what you were forecasting on your expenses? Yes, so if you go into the search records, if you don't know the case number, you can enter the utility and it will search, and then you just go down to, there's a little checkbox that you hit closed cases, and it can go to their last rate case, and you can go back through history of their rate cases. Okay, yes, sir, let me get him.
After the November 6th decision, is there an appeal process?
Yes, so, and I'm going to let Nancy answer that one as the lawyer.
Yes, there are two different phases. The first is by statute. A utility can file for rehearing at the commission. There's a 20-day statutory period for that. The other option is to file an appeal in Franklin Circuit Court, and that also has a statutory time period.
You had another question.
This county has all experienced in other utilities that's kind of submitted the same thing to the PSC board. And I wanted to know if this could be the same kind of situation where the improvements wasn't approved by the PSC, but kind of in litigation to where it could be an option for them to attach a increase fee until they get a certain amount of the money? Or is the rate increase the only way this could be approved?
So there are a couple mechanisms that the electric utility has that are riders on top of it, but all of their rates are approved by the Public Service Commission. So.
But I just want everybody to understand that it's not just a rate increase that they need to be concerned with. They could also submit a request for, or the PSC could govern those fees, and then they could bank that money until the improvements meet your standards.
So there are some situations where the utilities have made an application, and to be fair, we probably see it more in water and some of the smaller utilities, that when they make the part of our role is to make sure that utilities are charging fair, just, and reasonable rates to provide adequate, efficient service. So if there is a concern that the utility is not asking for sufficient rates or charging sufficient rates to be financially stable, which is a big piece of providing adequate service, then that is something that the Public Service Commission has the ability to actually authorize and charge higher, request the utility charge higher rates than what had been originally requested. So we haven't seen that on the electric side. That's been more in some of our smaller utilities.
There is an option for the, by statute, an environmental compliance surcharge is possible, and that is separate from a rate case, and that may be what you're speaking of, I'm not sure. That's when a utility comes in, says we've got to comply with XYZ law. It's going to take this particular construction project. This is going to be the financial impact. In those cases, the commission would approve or deny whatever the environmental compliance projects are proposed, but there's also, Linda talked about a rider, a separate rate to recover that. So that may be what you're speaking of. So you're right, the environmental compliance.
But they would have this option, it's not limited to local, smaller utilities, they would have this option.
The environmental compliance surcharge, yes, because it's strictly to comply with environmental laws.
What other process questions? Yes, sir.
I'm kind of confused if I can ask this question now or not, but of all the replacement generating facilities, I was curious, the two natural gas combined cycle facilities, what percentage of this replacement energy is going to be supplied by them?
I believe that information is in the case record, but I don't think we have that at our fingertips today. So that I would hate to. Are you saying yes? So.
I mean, I think we can go into this. You could look it up in the public record. It's about, each unit is, I think, 641 megawatts, so a little over 1,200 megawatts.
Okay. What other process questions, or are you all ready for public comment?
I don't know if this is a process question or not, but during the blackouts that we experienced this last winter season, I know that some of the local coal companies were able to provide coal to local energy resources to provide essential power. Has that been submitted into the application part of it? How much that impact was on this community or on each community? Since
I'm going to let Nancy answer that one. I don't know that one.
I don't know if that would be part of the application that they had to submit.
That would not be part of what was required. That would not be. We do have filing requirements by statute and regulation, and something like that would not have been part of it.
I think that would
But-
be very important to know.
It sounds like we're ready for public comment. So if you'll give us just a couple minutes to make sure we have the camera, because again, we want to make sure that this is recorded so anybody else. So Jim, if you'll help move things around.
Can y'all hear me okay? From the back? You all can hear me? Okay. Picked this up in another commissioner tonight. Good evening. My name is Kent Chandler. As I mentioned earlier, I'm chairman of the Kentucky Public Service Commission. And it's nice to be at least close to back home. Joining me tonight is Vice Chair Angie Hatton. Our third commissioner, Mary Pat Regan, couldn't be here tonight. But of course, we were reviewing or videoing the tonight's comments so that she'll be able to review the record after the fact. Just again, want to remind everybody, let everybody know, tonight's meeting is being recorded for two reasons. First, certainly so that Commissioner Regan has the ability to hear the comments. And second, so that all of your comments are placed into the public record so they can be used when we're making our decision in this case. We are here today to take public comments in case number 2022-00402 regarding the application of Kentucky Utilities in Louisville Gas and Electric. To reiterate one of the points that was made during the overview, the role and the obligation of the Public Service Commission is to ensure that the application does or does not meet the minimum statutory requirements, specifically whether there is a need for the proposed generation, whether the proposal results in wasteful duplication, and whether the retirements comply with the statutory requirements. We understand that in any proceeding of this type that there may be strong feelings and opinions. We ask that as you provide comments today that you be respectful and that you're also mindful of the time limit for each speaker. We are here to listen. The utility is not presenting during these public comments, and neither are any of the other parties to the case. The utility and the other parties have their opportunity to make their case known to the PSC during the processing of the matter. This, however, is an opportunity for customers of the utility and the public to state their positions, concerns, and to provide the commission comments for our consideration. Again, the commission is here to listen. During today's comment sessions, we will not be answering questions. The commission is the fact finder and decision maker in this case, and as such, the commissioners are unable to comment or speak to the process or substance of the pending application. Nevertheless, any questions that you may have or raise during your comments may be of assistance to the commission and its staff in adjudicating this matter. Just because we can't give you an answer doesn't mean you shouldn't ask the question. If you have questions for the utility or to the parties of this case, you can ask them publicly during this meeting with the hope that those entities will later convey an appropriate answer outside of the public meeting. Contact information for the utility and for other parties can be received by calling the Kentucky Public Service Commission staff. Our phone number is 502-564-3940, and all of our contact information can be found on our website at psc.ky.gov. Given the number of participants that have initially indicated their interest in providing comments, we will be limiting the length of comments to 7 minutes apiece. We will let you know when you have 1 minute remaining, and I'll do so by holding up a white piece of paper. As always, if you don't want to provide written public comments tonight, or you run out of time, oral public comments tonight, but you would still like to provide them and you may run out of time, written comments can be made anytime to the commission at any time in the case and must include your name, your address, and the case number. Again, 2022-00402. The information, and I'm going to wait until after we're done, the information for the case number and our website can all be had if you just ask any of us after the comments are over. I ask that when you come up, I'm going to call each person by the order in which they signed in. I'd ask that when you come up, you just provide us your name, your address, and then go ahead and start providing comments. I won't start the timer until you actually start providing the comments. One thing that I would note, hold on 1 second, sir. Okay. One thing that I would note is that if the vice chair and I are looking down, it's because both of us have digital pens, and we are making lots and lots of notes. Thank you very much. We're making lots and lots of notes based on the comments that you provide. Don't think that we're being rude or that we're not paying attention. We're just merely jotting down your comments. All right, so we will go by the order in which folks signed up. Is that better with the lights? Great. The first person that signed up, Mr. Felker. And I would note while Mr. Felker is coming to the microphone, I'm going to call everybody who signed up and indicated their interest in providing comments. If you initially did not indicate your interest in providing comments, when we get to the very end, I'll do an all call, and it's first come, first serve. Don't think that you've missed your opportunity. If you signed up for public comments and you no longer wish to provide them, once I get to your name, that's perfectly fine too. Just let me know. So, Mr. Felker, please your name, your address, and I'll start whenever you provide your comments.
Tony Felker, I live at 226 Kentucky Avenue, Providence, Kentucky. And my comment's going to be one of a retired coal miner. I've worked in the coal industry for 42 years. Retired from Dotiki Mines after working there for 22 years, which was in Webster County. Over those years, you always had to produce coal because I always worked at a non-union mines, and Dotiki was a non-union mines. But at the same time, over the years, as time went on and certain things happened in our communities and stuff, coal mining got a whole lot safer and got a whole lot cleaner. So all these complaints that we hear about the Clean Air Act and all this stuff, how many of us have really suffered any in our communities in these last 40 years? How many of us have went out on the clothesline anymore and your clothes be dirty from coal dust being on them? I don't think anybody has, because everybody has washers and dryers in their house now anymore. You don't put them out on the clothesline anymore. But the air is still clean. I am a retired coal miner, and I can't draw black lung right now because I'm healthy enough. And I worked at the face of the coal. And as time went on, and this may be repetitive, but as time went on, we learned to work with inspectors in our mines. When I first went to work in the coal mines, you may get an inspector once every 2 weeks. When I finally retired, we were getting inspectors every day. And you coal miners know what that means. And we became better coal miners for doing that. We learned to work with those things. And I think our coal companies have learned to work with our resources and making them cleaner, and so that the air is not as bad as it is. So I don't know why they want to go to all this other stuff. We're going to things that's not proven yet. Is solar power proven? Yeah, it's proven it can light up a house. But can it do a community over a period of time? I don't know, because that's something that's not my expertise part. But why do we do away with a natural resource that we already have? It's already proven, and now just because somebody wants to holler, hey, the air's dirty, we want to do away with coal and we want to go to these other fuels. So why do we want to do that? That's my question to everybody in the room. Why do we want to get away from it? And you guys are going to have to figure that out. Okay? And that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Jack Whitfield, 810 University Circle. I am a customer of KU. When I was looking through some of the slides and see where it can't be based on federal financial incentives, and that's probably not the case, but it is the case that the federal government has made it so costly to build new coal plants. And I think that's why we're going to see, if this plan goes through, a huge increase in our rates, which I know is one of the things that you all can take into account. But I want to remind everybody that they're not trying to shut this down. They're just the decision makers on whether it can be or not. So don't yell at them, please, because we want them coming away with a good impression of us. So I worked underground for about 15 years, so I know, it fed my kids, put roofs over their head, and has done so much for this community in the past, and will going forward as well. Now I'm the judge executive. My job is to protect my people. In December of last year, I think it was one pump went down at a natural gas plant. It was -3 degrees, and we've got rolling blackouts for hours. If I don't say this is an awful plan, I am not protecting my people, because we can't have rolling blackouts at -3 degrees or at 103 degrees. this kind of a change is putting lives at risk. I am not against solar power, not against gas at all. I am against removing power from the grid that we know we can count on, we know is reliable, and putting something back on that if we get a week of cloudy weather, what's going to happen to that battery storage facility? The panels aren't making juice. The batteries get drained. We're back to not having power, and that's simply not an option. So thank you.
Brought me a few notes here so I can stay on track. Didn't get too long. I haven't been around this many coal miners in a long time, since I was in a bathhouse, I guess. So it's a good feeling to be around everybody. But first of all, I'd like to thank you all, members of the PSC, for coming out and with this hearing today and choosing Hopkins County to do that. You know, as at least a sixth-generation coal miner, it'd be easy for me to make a case on, why we need to keep coal as our largest energy production. You know, I could discuss the economic impact of removing the estimated 2.8 million tons of coal mined and shipped to these very facilities we're talking about and the jobs it took to do so. I could mention that in 2014, Kentucky was number 8 in the country for the lowest residential utility rates, while today we're 17th. Same time period, the decreasing coal, we went from number 3 lowest in the country of industrial utility rates to now being 21st. You don't think that has an economic impact on the state of Kentucky? I would say the United States is being forced by environmental zealots into mandatory closures of coal-fired plants, while China is building a coal-fired plant 2 every single week. Europe's even forgot about this idea of changing, and they're all burning coal again. I could say I'm unaware of a single instance where a coal-fired plant was closed that ratepayers did not see an increase in their utility bills. All these I brought up are very important, but one thing I want to kind of hit on tonight specifically is grid reliability. The judge mentioned about our blackouts and how a single valve, I think even, was it caused that blackout in our county. December 2022, the North American Electric Reliability Corporation issued a paper warning about the disparity between retiring generation and current demand. They said, quote, operators must manage the pace of generator retirements until solutions are in place that can continue to meet energy needs and provide essential services. Grid operator MISO, right here that covers us, issued a white paper in January of 2022. They warned of increased demand and a decrease of generation and it coming to a critical mass at some point. In one part specifically speaking about the challenges associated with decommissioning thermal generators, that's coal-fired plants. They said, quote, another challenge is related to fleet change is the issue of fuel assurance. That means, do you have any fuel on standby? For example, natural gas resources may not be able to produce all the fuel they need at key times because of limitations in contractual gas services and reliance on a pipeline system that is shared with heating and manufacturing uses. Coal resources typically keep large stockpiles of coal on site. Moving on to another grid operator, February 2023, PJM. Another grid operator covering Kentucky sounded alarms of potential shortages of power availability. A couple of quotes that caught my attention. They said, quote, retirements that are at risk of outpacing and the construction of new resources due to the combination of industrial forces, including siting and supply chain, whose long-term impacts are not fully known. PJM is warning it may face a major shortfall in electric generating capacity as utilities retire more and more fossil fuel power plants. PJM warned of shortfalls due to a potential timing mismatch between retirements and growing electrical demands, the pace of new generation coming online. In the paper, they wrote about the concern, the mismatch between thermal retirements estimated at 40 gigawatts and replacement capacity at 15 gigawatts. And someone asked a question about how much they're bringing back on, and it's not near as much as they're taking down, I promise you. And they also calculate an estimated 13 gigawatts increase just from the increased use of the electrification of our society. So I'll give you a small excerpt from the Washington Examiner from an article in 2022. It said, U.S. grid operators are warning the power sector to be careful about replacing coal plants and other always-on thermal generation plants with variable renewable sources, or else risk the long-term reliability of regional power grids. It also mentions that the North American Electric Reliability Corporation warnings go to the heart of the difficulties of the transition towards green energy and away from fossil fuels that President Biden aims to accelerate in order to mitigate climate change. So we have these three grid operators along with major publications, and I think everybody in this room, or most of us in this room, and so we're all independent of each other, but we say we don't have enough power and it's coming to a cliff. And here we are today to discuss the approval of yet to close even more power plants. The math doesn't add up. You're asking to remove, LG&E and KU are asking to remove power from the grid without equal replacements. You know, I'm sympathetic with LG&E, KUs of the world. They're stuck between trying to balance this ideal with Washington, D.C., maintaining these older facilities. However, I think there has to be a time when businesses and states say enough is enough. Our old people don't need to freeze to death in their homes. I obviously could speak on this for a long time, but I just want to close and thank you for having this meeting here today. And I understand these appointments are they came from the Governor Beshear's, and I knew that he refused to sign the very bill that caused us to have this meeting about coal-fired plants. But I have confidence that you guys will make the right decisions going forward. Thank you.
7 minutes is not enough time.
Yeah, I can't even say hello in 7 minutes, so much less get started. Reputation precedes you, I guess, at times. Magistrate Felker did not mention, I think he was your Little League coach, Mr. Chairman. I don't think that was brought up whenever. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. My name is Steve Henry. I am the Judge Executive of Webster County. My address is 3939 State Route 109 South, Providence, Kentucky. First of all, appreciate Vice Chairman Hatton being here. Usually see her testifying before her for coal severance, and she, will have to say, is a wonderful supporter. And I appreciate all that you've done to help whenever Judge Whitfield and Judge Onan I became. So, can you hear me? Talk a little low. One of the things that I want to make sure that we brought up tonight, and it has been mentioned, and is about the reliability. We are at a situation here where that is probably one of the biggest concerns. We're certainly concerned about rates. We're concerned about coal and what that fuel mix is. But everything going forward is somewhat hypothetical. The battery storage facility, are those critical minerals there present to actually for that to come into play, which is a big portion of what the proposed changes are. Solar, again, going back to critical minerals, to be able to put all of these solar fields in place. You know, there's a timeline that comes to that. And so we all know that we don't even control most of the minerals that it takes for this. China controls about 85% of rare earth minerals. And so then we put our resilience and our reliance upon another country providing those critical minerals that's needed for the processes that we're talking about doing. I don't think that is the right strategy for the United States to go forward. I do appreciate Senate Bill 4. Senator Mills, my state senator, was a sponsor of that, and we are here tonight because of that bill, and I do appreciate him working on that to get that passed this past session. In going back to December, Winter Storm Elliott, you can find JPM, that was mentioned as one of the grid operators, put out a full report concerning Winter Storm Elliott. anyone that would like to go back and see and let them talk about the very same things that was here. But it was not only within some failures here, there also comes to be a point when the temperature goes below a certain amount that gas will not work. And so that's when that there's times that happened during that winter storm event, to where that it wouldn't make any difference if they had those failures or not. The gas just will not work at a certain temperature. Talking about megawatts, during that winter storm Elliott, because of so much loss, it's market driven at base price right then. Normally a megawatt is around anywhere from $33 to $36 per megawatt. During that event, the price of a megawatt electricity with JPM within their report was $3,700 per megawatt. All of that finds its way back down to the consumer, finds its way back down to the residents. I'm not sure, again, whether we have that reliability, or it's even possible that LGE and KU can even do what they have proposed to do, just because I do believe it's hypothetical at this point. None of it's been proven. And I don't know that we stand in a situation where that we can go on something that might happen. And by saying that, that we would shut down electrical generation that we currently have before anything like that would even be proven. So I appreciate your time. Again, thank you for coming to Madisonville in Western Kentucky.
I may be the first politician tonight to say I'm going to be brief and try to be brief. Good evening, Chairman Chandler and Vice Chair Hatton, and all those from the Public Service Commission. Welcome back to your home area, Mr. Chairman, and welcome to beautiful Western Kentucky to the others. My name is Adam Onay, and I'm the Judge Executive of Union County. I live at 1697 Ben Dyer Road, Sturgis, Kentucky. I'm particularly thankful for this opportunity to come before you and speak of opposition to the proposed plan that the KU and LGE had as an advocate for the many KU ratepayers in my county that will unfortunately be subject to higher rates if this plan is implemented. And certainly thanks to Senator Mills and Senate Bill 4 that allows us this opportunity to be before you. For context, Riverview Coal is in Union County, and the 800 or so hardworking men and women produce well in excess of 35% of the entire state's production in coal. Furthermore, they delivered 1.573 million tons of coal to two of the proposed plants scheduled for retirement in as recently as 2022. To say this would be detrimental to the county that I love and represent would be an understatement. But if I may, I would like to speak to you from a broader perspective of nearly 600,000 ratepayers from central, northern, southeastern, and western Kentucky, and the countless Kentucky citizens that enjoy employment at the hands of unprecedented economic growth built largely on the inexpensive energy cost afforded by coal-fired generation. For the record, I'm pro all forms of energy. I believe we should utilize all sources of energy and continue research into improvements that will enhance our lives. But let's not forget, the best energy source is always the reliable energy source. Our politically driven rush to green energy has in the past and will continue to expose reliability issues that we simply do not see with coal generation plants. They are the stable baseline that all other forms of energy rely on as well to make sure that the lights come on when we flip a switch. We've all heard the phrase, coal keeps the lights on, and it is true. But more importantly, it keeps the heat on and the cooling on as well. While we experienced rolling blackouts in our area this past year, it cannot be overstated the catastrophic results that could have happened if they had been longer. We cannot afford to move to a more or a less reliable energy source. Even the grid operators, as Representative Williams was talking about, are sounding the alarms. As recently as August, PJM grid operators expressed concern at a legislative committee meeting in Frankfurt that the growing demand for energy cannot be satisfied with reliable sources of energy leaving too quickly. Quite simply, this should result in all of us taking a step back and studying more thoroughly the unintended consequences of a short-sighted energy policy. Last, let me say that the $2.095 billion estimated cost of this project is a large amount of money, even from a government official like me. I find it difficult to even fathom those numbers. Where in the world will that money come from? Certainly tax credits will be used to offset the endeavor as an artificial fund prop, and it's my opinion that they are the only things that keeps the green energy viable. But ultimately, it's the ratepayers that will be strapped with this burden. How much can the taxpayers withstand? The decommissioning and new construction will be paid for by someone, and we all know how those trickle-down economics work. With the projected cost of a retrofit of some $264 million that would have the coal-fired generation plants in compliance with regulations going into effect this year, it seems to me a logical place to start would be there, where jobs, rates, and reliability would all be benefited, and ultimately, so would our people. I'm a relatively simple man with relatively simple applied logic. Based on the requirements of KRS 278264, as was mentioned in the presentation, that it is dispatchable, reliable, and resilient, and maintain minimum reserve capacity, it appears this plan cannot meet those requirements, and I urge the Commission to deny this project. Thank you very much for your time.
That was the brief one, Judge. I'd hate to hear the long one. Thank you. The next person that signed up was Senator Mills.
Thank y'all for being here today in Madisonville and taking time to hear from us coming down our way. I'm appreciative of that. Robbie Mills, my address is 2157 Locust Drive. I'm a state senator in District 4. It doesn't take a genius to understand that our once trustworthy and reliable electric grid is headed for uncertain times due to pressure from radical environmentalists who prioritize the Green New Deal over providing affordable and reliable energy to the working men and women of Kentucky. The future envisioned by these radicals include blackouts, voluntary shutdowns, and yes, closure of coal-fired plants. Thankfully, it doesn't have to be like that. That's why the General Assembly chose to enact Senate Bill 4, a measure I introduced to protect our power grids from degradation and to keep low cost for our consumers. After watching 40% of the nation's coal-fired energy production cease since 2009, I concluded that Kentucky needed to act. Senate Bill 4's emergency clause is why we are here today discussing the future of 4 coal-fired baseload generation units that serve many of my constituents in Western Kentucky. I'm sorry to say that it appears that Andy Beshear is not able to lead on energy in Kentucky. His unwillingness to sign Senate Bill 4 is a clear signal that he and his administration are controlled by radical environmentalists who want to kill coal and coal jobs. Unfortunately, this governor and his administration talks out of both sides of his mouth, and when he says he supports coal and affordable energy, but his actions speak louder than his words. This administration has not lifted one finger to combat the radical environmentalism coming from the White House or the EPA. Thankfully, our Attorney General has stood up for our traditional energy sector, which provides reliable and affordable energy to homes and businesses across the state. This brings me to the reason that we're here. I believe the prudent response today is to reject this proposal, save taxpayers millions of dollars, protect jobs, and to ensure our power grid is not put at risk by overdependence of unpredictable green energy. The radical left in this country is trying to destroy fossil fuels and the fossil fuel industry. The environmental, social, and governance movement, otherwise known as ESG, is just their latest attempt to enforce their views on the rest of us. Here's how ESG works. You get a score as an organization or a company that reflects upon your compliance with the radical left's definition of what is good. It doesn't have anything to do with affordability or reliability. It has everything to do with demonstrating that you have done what they want you to do. LG&E and KU claims that these actions are necessary to comply with federal air emission requirements, but that is simply not true. The environmental controls to comply with the rule that they just spoke of would only cost $264 million, a mere 1/12 of the requested $3 billion project. Their claim is just a smokescreen to implement a radical ESG agenda that will advance their social credit score, ultimately lining their upper management's pockets and sticking it to my constituents and the Kentucky consumers. In addition to preventing higher energy costs, the PSC must ensure the reliability of energy. The proposed plan does not take seriously the recent warnings from energy experts. NERC and others have warned that continued retirement of coal-fired baseload generation endangers the reliability of the grid. Kentuckians need power, and this plan puts reliable power and the grid at jeopardy. As the primary sponsor of Senate Bill 4, I urge the Commission to take the needed steps to preserve reliability and affordability of our state's electric grid by halting the closure of our remaining baseload electric generation plants. Our nation and our electric grids are simply not ready to abandon the most reliable energy source, which is coal. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand with the thousands of Kentuckians, and many of them are behind me tonight, who may be negatively impacted by this proposal. Thank you so much.
While you're walking up here, Mr. Morris, that's going to be my other request. Don't take offense when we're writing notes, and I'm going to mess up a lot of people's names, so please don't take offense if I call you the wrong thing. So,
I probably do a good job of writing it.
It's okay.
My name's Bruce Morris. My address is 102 Country Club Lane, Princeton, Kentucky. I work at Warrior Coal, where I am the continuous improvement manager. I've worked at Warrior for 14 years. Warrior Coal receives its power from KU, and we supply coal to the coal units that companies have requested approval to retire. Warrior Coal is located here in Madisonville, Kentucky, and is the second largest coal mining operation in the state, producing over 4 million tons annually. Warrior currently employs 500 coal miners. Warrior produces enough energy to power over 700,000 homes. Yes, it is coal that keeps the lights on. I think one of the gentlemen said that. Please remember that when you consider LG&E and KU's request to close 1,500 megawatts of coal generation. Coal mining has a large impact on the economy of Kentucky. Our Warrior mine has an estimated economic impact to the local and state economies is over $300 million annually. Our sister mine, Riverview Coal in Union County, Economic impact to the local and state economies is estimated to be $750 million. LG&E and KU's request to retire the coal units. Kentucky needs the low-cost, reliable energy these plants provide to support low-cost electricity, economic development, and support the coal industry upon which our local economies depend. Reliability of having electricity when we need it or want it is also a concern. We have already seen the impact of over-reliance on natural gas as LG&E and KU had to institute rolling blackouts at Christmas time this last year because their natural gas plants weren't able to perform. It makes no sense to increase Kentucky ratepayers' exposure to less reliable natural gas and its price volatility. The move away from coal generation is not just the concern of those of us who work in the coal industry. Some of this has already been said, but I'll go ahead and say it. North American Electric Reliability Corporation, NERC, in their recently released 2022 long-term reliability assessment warned that continued retirement of coal and natural gas baseload generation endangers the reliability of the power grid. NERC researchers said that they are deeply concerned that the grid is being forced to rely on less dependable electricity sources in the future because of coal retirements. NERC warns that the wide area and long duration extreme weather events place the electrical grid at risk of failure. One of NERC's primary areas of concern is the MISO region, which includes a large portion of Kentucky. NERC said some 93,000 megawatts of coal-fired generation have announced plans to retire by 2030, which is not very far off, and they expect more coal retirements, especially during 2026, 2028, which is coming up pretty quick. But then they're being retired because of EPA regulations. The regulations NERC is concerned about are the justification LG&E and KU provide to justify the closure of these coal units. These regulations have been stayed by the federal courts. This alone should provide the Commission enough reason to deny the closure of these coal units, at least until a final ruling by the courts. At least a final ruling by the courts. NERC officials said that. How the man is that? Good. NERC officials said they strongly urge utility commissioners to pause coal retirements until grid operators have identified and valued all reliability attributes. I hope our public service commissioners take heed of the warnings from the NERC and deny the closure of these coal units. Thank you.
I don't have a book. My name's Gordon Bowes. Born here, left a while, back a while. Live at 115 Pin Oak Lane here in Madisonville, Kentucky. A couple comments and a question that I'll leave you with and such. The states, and I don't mean just Kentucky or Indiana and such, but the state's House and Senate are our last line of defense against all the green agenda being forced down our citizens. Thinking about oil and gas BTU ratio, it's my understanding it's about a 6-to-1 ratio. As Europe saw this last year, $100 oil equals $16 equivalent natural gas rates. And we now are pushing towards 20 billion cubic feet of export per day going throughout the world. Natural gas costs are going to continue to increase. And this is more of a question for the PSC. have you by chance asked the power companies, Global Gas, KU and such, what is the best source of energy to provide electricity if they were free to choose, not being forced to change? Thank you.
My name is Randy Harlan. I live at the next county over in Unionburg County, 114 Geary Lane. Most of the points I wanted to make today has already been noted. I just want to add a few things. I worked in the coal industry underground for 16 years. I've serviced in different, 2 or 3 different mining supply companies the last 33 years. So the economic impact, a lot of people think, you know, these gentlemen, something 800 jobs at Riverview, 500 at Warrior, you know, for every job, and all of them is very important jobs. These guys are doing a great job every day, but for every coal mining job, there's at least a minimum of 10 downstream jobs. Our company, and the 200, 500 different vendors that service these companies, you know, there's hundreds of thousands of different employees and families that's going to be affected by, you know, if these places shut down or cut back and all that. So I just want that I haven't heard that mentioned. So another thing, you know, when you got the coal burning or the gas, you know, you pretty well know the megawatts. You pretty well know that just by data. You know, out here, sometimes the sun don't shine for 3 weeks. I was just looking for the BIMSCO site here, the live grid right here today. There's 68%, excuse me, 68% between coal, 37% coal, 36% gas, 1.2% solar right now, live. 14% wind. The wind sometimes don't blow here for weeks. You know, the sun don't shine. So if somebody, I know there's a lot of smart energy people, but like there's a whole lot of things got to be figured out there. So we appreciate you guys' time, and we're not against solar or, you know, and all the different green energy, but to have that reliable, affordable energy that we know is there, where you put a 90-day supply on the ground. You know, just a couple of weeks ago here, we had a heat wave here. And just on this side here, you're looking, you know, they got warnings out that there's going to start to be rolling blackouts. You know, I've worked in the business for 47 years. You know, and me, like other people, is affordability, reliability. You know, and none of us want to be out there when it's 110 degrees and our AC don't work. Or back there in the ice storm of 19, we was without a power for 14 days. There's people actually froze to death in this surrounding area here. So something very important, the reliability. And so I just hope you guys take that to heart. And, you know, it's an all energy mixed, but I can't see why we can't build some new coal-fired power plants here. They build them in China, India, Germany's done tried what the U.S. is looking more so doing now. So it just don't make sense. So you know, economically and morally, it just don't make sense to me. So we appreciate you guys' time very much. Thank you.
Terry Brown. Yeah, if you don't mind to leave it in, we've got a lot of problems with it. Thank you.
Terry Brown, 825 Slaughters Lake Road, Hanson. I do appreciate the opportunity to speak to the PSC today. And I guess it's quite ironic that my oldest daughter, Caitlin, used to represent the utility companies in presenting to the PSC, Caitlin Brown. So I guess that's quite ironic. But we are a practical group here. We're not a radical group. And we all know that coal is reliable and it's affordable. And let us use forethought instead of afterthought as we move forward in this process. As we go down this road and we get deeper and we're closing these coal-fired plants, we're going down that road, and if we keep closing them, we're not going to be able to turn back just in case something goes awry, and these are unproven methods. As president of the Hopkins County Farm Bureau, my concern is about agricultural electricity. With the power grid being off for a period of time, I mean, there's lots of folks that I know that harvest 100,000 bushels of corn in a day, and they can't stand for that electricity to be off in that period of time. They've got that wet grain in their bins. And then you have the confinement livestock operations, poultry, hogs. You know, if they're without electricity for an extended period of time, I know folks that have 100,000 hogs, and 100,000 dead hogs is going to take a big hole to dig to take care of those. But I just did want to present the agriculture side of the need for reliable electricity, and I think coal can provide that for us. Thank you.
Noel Hardwick.
Noel Hardwick. I live at 149 East Greenville Road in White Plains. I do want to say that I appreciate y'all coming down and being with us tonight and expressing a lot of the information that we've seen. And I think you can see Southern hospitality starts right here in Western Kentucky, and the way we want to reach out and take this information and be rational about it. My thing, and I'm like Representative Williams, my family started mining coal in the early 1900s. So I've got a pretty storied history about coal and coal mines, and I love a coal miner. If you can't love a coal miner, you can't love nobody. And these people around here today are part of the reasons why we have the success in producing coal. And young lady, you mentioned about having in most of these places having a surplus of coal indicates of an emergency. I don't think you've ever heard of a coal generating power plant that run out of coal, because these people right here are going to make sure that that doesn't happen. What I want to do, because these eloquent speeches have pretty much said everything that I would like to say, but what I would like to express to the panel is when you drive through Western Kentucky or Eastern Kentucky, you know, the decisions that's going to be made is really going to affect not only this group here tonight, but their families and beyond that. So it's not a matter of, you know, whether the EPA rules and the guidelines and clean air and all that, but I want you to really take back and consider the number of people that, you know, it's going to affect, and the kind of jobs that they have, the money that they make, the you know, the packages, whether it's insurances or so on. It's a economical impact that if you're not around the coal industry, it's hard to express. And I could ask any one of y'all to take a day or 2 days and walk through West Kentucky or East Kentucky and say, hey, is anybody in your family associated with the coal industry or have been? Every one of them, 100%. So that's how deep rooted the coal industry is here, what it means to us. And, you know, I had people work for me that never had a high school education, you know. Now, and I say with that with respect, but they had a good job. They had an opportunity to get a good job that had benefits, that made good money. So that's another part of the coal that people don't see. Yeah, you hear them talk about, well, coal's dirty and coal's, it is hazardous. It's no doubt about that. But the other thing, and I'm going to leave you with this. I'm in a couple of clubs where we go out and we ask the coal operators, the coal companies, to help support projects that we're doing to make our communities better. They always step up. When we've had snow real deep, you know who's out there on the roads cleaning the roads? Coal companies. They put their equipment out there. These are little things that mean a lot to the communities that you, a lot of times that you don't see if you live in Lexington or Louisville or some larger area. That's the kind of feeling that they have. It's an extended family. It's not just, well, it's a coal company and it's the employees. And when you look across this group right here, and listen to the ones that's got up and the ones that will follow, you'll see how important coal is to Western and Eastern Kentucky. And I appreciate each one of y'all, and I know you'll consider it, go over it, and make a wise decision. Thanks so much.
Bill Edelman.
Hello, my name is Bill Edelman. I live at 805 Robinson Road in Morganfield, Union County. I am the general manager of Riverview's coal operations in Union and Henderson counties, and I thank you for the opportunity to come here and speak today. At my home, I am a customer of Kentucky Utilities, and so is the Riverview mining operation. In fact, Riverview Coal was one of KU's largest customers. I am here on behalf of approximately 900 coal miners and their families at Riverview Coal, where we do the hard work of mining coal safely and cost effectively every day. We are opposed to approving the closure of these plants. The coal we mine is supplied to the power plants that LG&E and KU have requested approval to retire. Riverview Coal is the largest underground continuous miner coal mining operation in the world, producing over 10 million tons annually with enough access to enough coal reserves to last more than 70 years. Riverview Coal produces enough energy to power 1.6 million average homes. Yes, it is coal that keeps the lights on for Kentucky and pays the bills. I would like to focus on the affordability and reliability of coal-fired electricity. The coal units that LG&E and KU are requesting to retire have the ability to power over 600,000 homes. Kentucky needs to keep its affordable and reliable energy sources. At this time, our electric grid is being compromised by direct influence from the Biden administration and its regulatory agencies in pursuit of its single-minded goal of stopping coal use and pushing the adoption of unreliable and expensive renewable energy. Relying on sources such as solar and wind generation is short-sighted and will result in reduced energy reliability and will bring an economic crisis in Kentucky. We have already seen the impact of over-reliance on natural gas, as LG&E and KU had to institute rolling blackouts last December because their natural gas plants could not perform and the renewables were ineffective. It makes no sense to increase Kentucky ratepayers' exposure to less reliable natural gas and the associated price volatility. Kentucky families have seen the prices they pay for electricity skyrocket over the past 2 decades. More and more Kentuckians face energy poverty as they struggle to pay increasingly exorbitant electric bills. If the Commission approves LG&E and KU's request to spend over $2 billion, how much will that increase my own utility bill and Riverview's and all the other customers of KU? How much will the increase affect Riverview's cost of production and the cost of every other business in the state? It is my understanding that LG&E and KU have refused to provide that information to the Commission, and we wonder why that is. The shift from coal-based electricity generation to gas and renewables has not delivered on the promises of, quote, cheap, dependable, and abundant energy supplies. Quite the contrary, the shift away from coal has led to higher and higher prices and lost economic competitiveness for our state. Large-scale, low-cost, renewable energy is a myth. As coal production and generation has declined in Kentucky, our Commonwealth has dropped from having the 6th lowest industrial utility rates in 2015 to now ranking in the middle of the pack at number 21. I'm here today to ask that the Kentucky Public Service Commission deny LG&E and KU's request to retire their coal plants. Please do not remove this generation capacity from our state's resource base. The move away from coal generation is not just the concern of those of us who work in the coal industry. Again, I'll repeat the North American Electric Reliability Corporation warning that continued retirement of coal and natural gas baseload generation endangers the reliability of the power grid. Once again, on behalf of the Riverview coal miners and all of us who are ratepayers to KU, I am here today to ask that the Kentucky Public Service Commission deny LG&E and KU's request to retire their coal units. I have a question I'd like to ask that I don't expect an answer, but just a question, is why do they package this proposal up with multiple closures and multiple building? Why do they not evaluate each power plant on its own, standalone, to where we can understand what they're doing? But when they package things together, it seems like it's combined to hide maybe the details that we need to know before they make these decisions. And the other thing I wanted to add was the wind generation and solar generation is relatively new technology, and we're throwing away, years and years of reliable service for something that has not been proved, to last as long as the coal-fired power plants have lasted. Thank you very much.
I'm Penny Hardwick. I live at 149 East Greenville Road in White Plains, Kentucky. And I'm the wife of a very proud coal miner. When I think of the coal mines, I think of the families that are supported by the coal mines. You guys have a really tough decision to make at one point. And I'm hoping that when you consider everything that's going to be told to you, showed to you, that you're going to hear from us and them. Wade Williams, your father and your grandfather would be very proud of you. I want you to know that. We know as Americans that things can change overnight. And as Americans, we've seen some drastic changes that have caused hardships in our communities, in our states, in our nation, and in our homes. We've all felt it. The thing that we have to realize and know as human beings, that we have to depend on each other to do the right things for our country, for our state, for our homes. And we can do that. We've been, one thing about America, we've been strong. The past few years, some of those strengths have been taken from us. We need to stand up for what we know is best. Not for just our little cities, our little towns, and our single families, but for our country. You know, we watched what happened in Ukraine. That can happen here. This is about our freedoms to make decisions on how we make our livings, how we take care of our families, and how we take care of each other. And when you step up to cast your vote for what's being discussed here today, I want you to remember that and picture that flag flying when you do. Thank you for coming and giving us the opportunity to tell you how we feel and where our hearts are at.
I'm Kenny Allen. I live at 6100 White Plains Road, White Plains, Kentucky. I want to thank you guys for coming and listening. I want to thank everyone in the audience that has spoke tonight, the senators, the representatives, the judge executives. It restores my faith in humanity to hear it coming. Makes me proud. I spent 50 years in the coal mining industry. Now I'm an old retired guy. At the end of that coal mining career, I also spent about 5 years working with a major utility here in the United States. And I have a great deal of respect for all our utilities. I've worked with all of them for years. Kentucky Utilities and LG&E is two of the best in my opinion. They've done great. We've had great reliability here. No one can complain. Energy is the base of our standard of living. It's the foundation. And when we start to mess with what we know how to do, we're going to destroy our standard of living. And it's coming quickly. And you've heard that here tonight from almost everyone that's spoken. We're better to take a stand for the right thing than here in our great state of Kentucky.
Amen.
We've got the people in Frankfort now that are willing to stand up. We've got you as a commission. That I realize you have a tough job, and I don't envy you your position on any of these matters that you're faced with because of the great pressure that we're receiving from not only in our country, from around the world now with the green activists. But it's all about money, friends. It's all about money. The coal industry is the foundation of electrical generation. It's what put our country on top after World War II. Our forefathers worked hard to establish coal mines in Kentucky. Our utility workers worked really hard to establish our utilities, and we've all been very blessed by all that hard work. So please, take all this into consideration when you make your decision. Help us maintain the reliability and the standard of living that we've been accustomed to. Thank you.
Darn it. I'll just speak. I'm a little taller. I'm above this mic, but I hope you can hear me. Okay. I'm Brad Schneider. I live at 1552 Autumn Lane in Henderson, Kentucky. I stand to support many of the comments, if not all the comments made already, and I wanted to draw a little bit finer point on the potential economic impact, negative economic impact on any price increases or threats of unreliability. In Henderson County, we have one of the few remaining virgin aluminum smelters in the country in Century Aluminum. And their business model is based almost entirely on the cost of their energy because it is so energy intensive. Every day, Century Aluminum uses the amount of power equivalent to the power needs of the city of El Paso, Texas. And any increase in those prices could easily lead to a shutdown of that facility, impacting more than 500 employees and hundreds of millions of dollars in local economic impact. It's happened before. They just closed a smelter in Hancock County. They are only one of 5 virgin aluminum smelters left in the United States. And the reason we have so little now is because rising cost of power compared to other parts of the world. Also, we have experienced a tremendous uptick in economic activity in Kentucky. And one of the largest, if not the largest economic projects announced recently is the large EV battery plant in Elizabethtown. I think it's 500 acres under roof, 5,000 employees. But ironically, its product will lead to an ultimate increase in the demand for electricity in our region and in our country through electronic vehicles. Anything that threatens the MISO grid, it raises prices from the MISO grid or threatens intermittency on the MISO grid, will impact not only something like that EV battery plant, but also Century Aluminum. And it's not just coal businesses and coal mines that are threatened by this model being sent, the precedent being sent by KU and LGE's proposal. So I stand in support of everything that's been said tonight. I stand against the KU LG&E proposal. I think it's a bad idea and the PSC should reject it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Chandler and Commissioner Haddon. It's great to see you again. Enjoyed working with you in the past. My name is Jim Gooch. I live at 806 Princeton Street, Providence, Kentucky. I've served as state representative of the 12th Legislative House District, located in the heart of the West Kentucky coal fields since January of 1995. I've also served as chairman of the House Natural Resources and Energy Committee since 1999. At the beginning of my legislative term, in my first session in 1996, Kentucky had the second lowest electricity rates in the nation and the lowest east of the Mississippi River. That rate was 4.03 cents per kilowatt hour. In 2021, the latest data that I could find ranked Kentucky 13th lowest in the country, and we've already heard that we're way worse than that. And that was at 9.12 cents per kilowatt hour. That rate has more than doubled in just less than 25 years. And according to energy experts, Kentucky's electric rates are expected to more than double again in a much shorter time frame due to the Biden administration's EPA regulations on carbon dioxide emission reductions from existing and new coal-fired power plants. Kentucky enjoyed these low rates in the mid-90s because we wisely used the resources that we had available, mostly coal. It was abundant and cheap, and 93% of our electricity was generated from that. We had the freedom to make our own choices about how we used our own resources, and we chose the cheapest and the most reliable sources. Cheap electricity not only benefited our citizens, it was critical in creating jobs and economic development. We were a very energy-intensive state. Now, energy intensity is just a way of measuring how much of a state's utilities go to large industrial customers. Where most states, they had an energy intensity rate of 20 to 27%. In Kentucky at that time, it was 49%. So 49% of our electricity went to large industrial customers, creating jobs for Kentuckians. Starting with the Obama administration, that freedom was taken away from us as he wanted a one-size-fits-all energy policy. His regulations on carbon emission forced fuel switching from coal to natural gas and renewables such as wind and solar. His regulations touted technologies that were not proven or available and too expensive to be maintained. We are seeing the same policies under the Biden administration. This administration does not seem to care that these mandates are even workable and are entirely blind to the mistakes and the disasters that they are creating. Just last week, Isom Hawk from PJM, one of the two system grid operators serving Kentucky, testified before our committee in Frankfort. His testimony centered on PJM's very real concerns that the closing of so much baseload sources such as coal is not being replaced. Much of the testimony centered around the fact that when replacing generation, assets of all sources are not equal. He defined high-capacity baseload generation such as nuclear, coal, and natural gas as thermal generation. Coal, for instance, that is designed to run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week with a coal stockpile on site is 85 to 90% efficient, as is nuclear power. Wind and solar may have an efficiency rate of only 18 or 20%, simply because the wind doesn't blow all the time and the sun doesn't shine all of the time. So replacing 1,000 megawatts of coal-fired plant with 1,000 megawatts of solar is not the same thing. Mr. Hawk warned that we cannot shut down all thermal and try to replace it with intermittent generation. The Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, FERC, has raised concerns about the reliability crisis and its severe risk to affordability, dependability, and economic resilience. Just last month, FERC Commissioner Mark Christie testified that we're retiring dispatchable generation resources at a pace and an amount that is far too fast and far too great, and it is threatening our ability to keep the lights on. Sadly, what I'm told is that only 2% of the world's carbon emissions is from United States electricity generation. So even if we were to eliminate all of that, it would have no effect at all on global carbon emissions. The sad thing is that we're doing this even though the rest of the world, as has been stated earlier, are continuing to build coal-fired power plants. And also, we know that nothing that the current administration in Washington is planning is even doable. It doesn't matter about the whether it's the shift to electric vehicles, whether it's the 50% reduction in carbon by 2035 or whatever, or the zero carbon emission. It's not possible, and this administration doesn't seem to care about that. I asked the Public Service Commission to honor the legislative intent of Senate Bill 4 and not approve any baseload retirements until the utilities prove that they can guarantee it is replaced by the same affordability and reliability. Thank you very much.
I'm Brian Anderson. I live at 535 Scanfield Drive here in Madisonville. Over my career in the coal business, I was involved in negotiating coal contracts with several utilities. The one thing that always came up, they could get gas cheaper, and they'd beat us up on price. We'd lower our price. We might get the contract. That kept utility rates low too. If you eliminate all the sources for fuel to a power plant, what's going to happen to the prices? They're going to have a monopoly on you. You're going to pay whatever they say. You don't have anything to bail out on, we'll go get coal. You don't just you can turn a valve on a gas line. You can shut it off. You don't just turn a valve off on a coal company. When a coal company closes, it closes. To restart one, it's years in the making to try to get done. And in that period of time, we'll suffer as a country and as locally as the people. I hadn't heard any backup plans for what happens in a natural disaster till you supply gas to a utility. You know, we live on the New Madron Fault, and there's lots of subfaults. You're not going to pump gas after an earthquake of that type. Coal companies, we'll build a road in there, and we'll supply the coal. There's no problem with that. Back when I worked for Andalex, during the winter one year, we had deep snow. Big rivers at Seabury couldn't get coal in. They didn't have enough stockpile. They called me, wanted to know if we could ship coal to them to keep them going. Yeah, we can do that. They shot us a low ball price. I mean, really low, because they were hurting and in a bad shape. We didn't agree to that, but we agreed to a fair price that they were paying us at another utility. So we started shipping. We also graded the roads from Henderson to Hopkinsville. Opened all the 4 lanes. We sent all our graders out there and opened it up. Coal companies will keep us going. I really am concerned about what's the backup plan for all of this. I'm not against green energy. The only thing I have against them is the government subsidies that they receive. I don't think we ever received a government subsidy in a coal company. You know, if you got to keep them alive with government funded money, how good is it? You know, I hear rumors, I may be wrong, that, you know, the wind turbines, there's not a one standing that has ever generated enough electricity to pay for it without the government subsidies. I don't understand that type of thinking. In a coal company, we either make it or break it. You know, it's up to us to produce coal at a cheap enough price that we can still get by and make it. Sometimes it's been hard over the years. You just barely get by on some contracts, but you still kept going. Coal will get it done. The stockpiles, I had the ability to fly over the utilities and keep an eye on them for marketing reasons. If their stockpiles were down and low and they called, or if we called on them to see about another contract, we knew what their situation was. They didn't have much coal on the ground. We'd hold our price a little higher. If they had an abundance of coal, it was a little different. But still the battle between the different sources of fuel that they could use for the utilities. Eliminating coal and going to one source, natural gas, is a mistake. Whatever has to be done, we need to stop this foolishness in this country of following this Green Deal. I'm not against any of it that'll sustain itself, pay for itself, and add to what we generate. That's a good thing. We should be. And the other thing is, I don't hear anything anymore about hydro. What happened to hydro? Why is it never talked about? I'm not pushing the hydro, I'd rather push coal, but it just seems unreasonable to me to limit yourself to one source of fuel for a plant. Thank you.
The position of being so down the line, there's a lot of comments have already been made. I just would make a couple of additions. I'd spoken about what was in our local newspaper about the filing, which stated that reliable and low-cost coal-fired generation that has served Kentucky well for generations has a limited remaining economic life. And that's that last part that got me is, well, the only reason it has a limited economic life is because the pressures from, as has been styled, green energy advocates in the current Biden administration, which actually goes back to words uttered by Barack Obama in his run to the presidency in 2-year terms. He said that you can build a coal-fired plant, but you'll go bankrupt. That was his goal. To put it out. It was this obsession to shut this down. And it strikes me as ironic that at least for the last half century, the use of coal has become dramatically more environmentally friendly in getting it out of the ground into the power plant and in its burning to produce power. The expression that I just want to reemphasize again, say it like so many other have, is it's about base load, reliability, and economic viability, and you just cannot discount the coal. As the representative from Riverview said, pointed to in just his own company, that we have hundreds of years of known reserves to supply that fuel source. So thank you, and
Chastity Chapel. I live at 45 Mine Equipment Road in Dawson Springs. I'm against doing away with the coal power plants. Rather obvious. I'm here in support with everybody else. But if we have problems with the grid system and keeping up and having to have scheduled blackouts, how can they do away with the system that we already have and replace it with something that's less reliable? Whenever we have blackouts, we have people that is vulnerable at these blackout times. They're doing it in cold weather. They're doing it in hot weather. I work EMS, so I get to deal with this. And whenever you deal with people that is overheated because they're in a house and they can't afford to run their air conditioning because power bills are already high, what are we going to do if we just keep going higher and higher? And they really are out of power for even longer amount of times. So I'm definitely against it. Another thing that I want to know if anybody has looked at is the impact of solar and battery power energy on the municipalities as far as their first responders. Whenever you look at your first responders, your fire departments, whenever they go onto a fire scene, if you go into a house that has solar panels on top of it, you're not going to go in that house because you could kill every firefighter that's on that scene, every one of them. A lot of times they just let the homes burn. So when you look at the municipalities, you're going to lose tax money from property taxes. You can lose money from losing firefighters, first responders. You can have to add money all the way around for having to do extra training, extra materials, just extra equipment. So, I mean, all the way around, solar, gas, all that energy, yeah, it could be great, but we also have to have our coal energy and not look at what's just best for bigger entities. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Well, of course it was mine. I'd like to take this time to say how I've come to know your commission, and thank you for the service that you provide the community. I've come to learn you in the first KU application when they introduced their request to do automatic reader meters. And I got to know the commission during that time, and I want to say how great you are and how professional, and I appreciate your service that you do to community. And now working with you with a local South Hopkins Water Commission or application, y'all are just top notch, and I appreciate that, and I expect nothing less during this outcome. I have 3 interests at heart with this new application from KU. First off, I'm a customer of KU, and it affects anybody, and you've learned many different aspects from the effect on the coal miner, first responders, and customers. I mean, it's going to impact a lot of life-changing decisions. A lot of people are going to transition to solar because they can't afford their bills. That's going to create a downfall there. My second interest is my husband. I won't mention his name because he tends to get messages and comes home and says, "What have you done now?" kind of thing. But he is a first responder in an active role, a lead role. And I heard several mention tonight that, we dodged a bullet with this last blackout. What could have happened? And I want to let the commission to know what did happen.
and we're easy to forget, but this county experienced a severe ice storm not too long ago. We were 14 days without power. And as a wife of a first responder, I have to share him often. And I hear stories, kind of his vent. He would never sit up and tell the commission or the public what he does. But during that time, they were visiting nursing homes that were without power. And it's very easy to say, well, we've fixed a lot of these problems. We have generators now. We have other options for these people. But what are these generators running off of now? Most of them are natural gas. Well, we've already heard someone say, after 3 degrees, your natural gas doesn't work. We learned during the tornado, the natural gas lines were damaged. There was no gas. So these first responders have to pick up that tab, and they're going to continue to do it. But I'm going to lose my train of thought here. But they're out there doing kerosene, providing kerosene for these runs. They're generating heat for these people, for the single mothers and the elderly that can't afford heat, that don't have heat, are in the blackouts. They're dying when this happens. One instant, they found a man barricaded in a room with his hot water heater that was a natural gas hot water heater. He had on every clothes that he could get on, every blanket, and he was found frozen to the hot water heater. That's your scenario of what can happen when what's being provided is taken away. And I have to share my husband for these outages. Not only as a first responder, he's going out and he's providing these services because KU has not held up their end of the bargain for whatever reason. And we all know we're told that's what has to happen. But these people are filling the gap, and the world doesn't quit turning when the power's out. People experience severe effects from what's happening. And my third interest is he is a coal miner. And Bill Aderman can contest that he has to share my husband also with a coal mine, with the first responder, and the first responder aspect has to share him with the coal mines. Because, as we heard tonight, a coal mine provided emergency coal during an outage to pick up the tab. These coal miners are working 16, 17 hours a day to pick up this tab. I want the commission to know, once you get rid of this entity, you're going to get what you get. You're going to get what you get from solar. There's not going to be a coal miner anymore there to pick up the tab. There's not going to be a force behind there because this is going to shut them down eventually. And that's been the goal for a while. This is going to shut the coal mines down. And no disrespect, but the coal miners in this room, they're going to keep giving until you take that away from them. That's the kind of person they are. That's what kind of man my husband is. Like it's been said here tonight, you don't get rid of an entity that's working and it's willing to give so much to only get what you can get. You can't get any more gas that comes through a line than what gas comes through the line. You can't get any more solar out of a solar panel that's not getting any more solar activity. You're going to get what you get. I don't see the urgency and I don't see the importance of getting rid of an entity that will provide you service no matter what. One more thing. That was the last thing I had to say. It was the resilience of the coal miner. Just keep that in mind as you make your decision.
Thank you, sir. Before I speak, I'd like to give the room an opportunity with 1 minute of my time to stand up and stretch their legs, because I remember Governor Louis Nunn once told me, he said, Mike, the mind can only absorb what the rearian can endure. So we've all been sitting for 2 hours, at least a lot of you have. So if you'd like to stand up, I won't take offense to you standing while I'm speaking. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Michael Pape. I live at 201 Michael Avenue in Hopkinsville, Kentucky. I am Congressman Ed Whitfield's former district director and served with him for 22 years in all the counties that are here represented tonight. And I felt compelled to come and stand here on behalf of the people behind me and so many others that couldn't be here to speak to this commission, because I think you're a very important commission and the work that you do truly represents the public's interest. It's one of the commissions that I believe in state government is tasked with truly representing the interest of the people behind me and our communities. And I know you take that seriously. And that is why I say to you, this decision is a very straightforward and simple decision. And that is deny that application to take that coal-fired power asset offline. I would say that's very clear. And I think if you do what you are to do as a commission and you follow the legislation that's been passed by Senator Mills, the state legislature, you will be in line with that mission all the way. And that's not to say that any of us are opposed to our utilities. We appreciate our utilities and we stand behind them. We've always been supportive of them. As Congressman Whitfield served this district for 22 years, we stayed in close contact with the utilities. We were in close contact with the coal miners and with every aspect of energy generation. And that's what made it work so well and so good in Kentucky. We should be the leader for the other states in this country in what we do and how we do it, and what we stand up for and what we don't stand up for. And we should be standing up for coal, not just because it's something that we produce here in Kentucky, but because we know history has shown that there is no other form of energy in the world today that provides the return on energy generation, electricity in particular, than coal. Prove me wrong. Prove all of us wrong. Anybody, I challenge you that. Congressman Whitfield was chairman of the Energy Subcommittee on Energy and Commerce, and for 6 years, we had people from every walk of life come before that committee trying to tell us what was wrong with coal and different ways of meeting our energy demands. But at the end of the day, when you looked at it from a practical and rational standpoint, you cannot take coal out of the equation for our energy demand-based load in this country. You cannot do it and meet the needs of this country on so many levels. And the judges here and the representatives, the state senators, and the people that represent the coal miners and the coal miners have all said tonight how important that is. So your decision is very straightforward and very clear to make. And it's nothing against Kentucky Utilities. We're not against people. We all need to be pulling on the same rope in the same direction for Kentucky, right? That's what we should be doing, and we should be getting everybody on board to do that, right? So let me throw out a few other things just for your information out there. You may know it, you may not know it. Natural gas. Yeah, it's a clean form of energy. It's abundant, but there's about 86 years maybe of that left in our country at the current usage. Coal, 348 years left of that resource. We have to have an all-of-the-above energy policy. We have to develop all forms of energy, and we have to do better at all of them, but we cannot take the base load key component out of the equation. Now, we talk about clean air, clean water, and all that, and that's great, and we have the cleanest air and water probably of any country in the world. We're not the polluter here, but we cannot do this. We cannot bring those emissions down worldwide unilaterally. We know that. It takes a world effort, and until China and India engage and agree to that and work towards that, we're whistling in the wind. So we have to be practical as Americans. We have to be a strong country to help lead the rest of the world, to do what is right for the world. But we can't do it with our hands tied behind our backs. And when you think of this area here in Kentucky, we're a big user of aluminum. We produce more aluminum here than most places in the country. And aluminum, guess what? We all know requires a lot of electricity, right, to make that product. But we also know, on top of that, that aluminum is a very important element to our national security, right? So if we're going to keep the aluminum industry in the United States where it has to be for our own national security, we have to have low-cost electricity, reliable electricity, and that's exactly what coal affords us. So I plead to you, and I know you know this, but I thank you for being here to listen to everybody here tonight and their views and their thoughts and the passion of which they expressed what they did to you. That's very important that you did that. But you are a public utility commission, and I think you know that your interest has to be the public's interest. And I think it's been clear tonight, and I haven't seen anybody stand up here that was for what Kentucky Utilities is asking you for. So I think that decision is going to be easy for you if you're listening to the public and you're listening to the representatives that represent the public that are here tonight and their passion and their efforts. So please let us know what we can do to support you in this decision, but please make this decision a very simple one and stand behind it with full force. Thank you very much.
Kevin Cotton, I live at 2400 Ridgewood Drive here in Madisonville, and I am a KU customer. We've heard a lot of profound statements, statistics, and information about coal, about natural gas. We've heard about the $300 million a year economic impact into our community. You all have traveled to Eastern Kentucky, and you see the billions of dollars that the federal government has had to put back into that community that's still devastated today because the coal mines are no longer in operation. Amen. The city of Madisonville, Kentucky supports our coal mines. We've even offered for them to mine inside the city limits of Madisonville because we believe in the men and women and the families that are supported by coal. Kentucky has been built on coal, and we're turning our back on it. When we see issues all across the nation because of natural gas generated power, when we're at 3 degrees below, 10 below, and we're seeing the news, the national news, about people that are dying in their car because they're just trying to stay warm because of the rolling blackouts. It's a problem. When I was talking to Judge Henry about the battery storage, they were looking at a battery storage in Webster County, 4 hours for 120 homes. That's what that facility could store. We're talking about thousands of customers across the Commonwealth that KU services. Do we have a battery facility that's going to be able to support that? You want to talk about economic impact, or you want to talk about the EPA environmental issues? Let's talk about wind and solar for just a minute. Tell me how you're going to recycle them. Because right now there's a national crisis because of the windmills. They have no way to recycle them. Nothing to do with them. And I don't know if you've seen the size of those, but they're huge. Are we going to use the Grand Canyon to recycle them? Because if you look at just the sheer size of a windmill, you have to do something with that blade to recycle it. And they don't have that answer yet. They don't have the answer for the solar panels and what's inside of those solar panels and how you're going to recycle that and put that back into the ground. We talk about China. Right now there's a big issue with China, right? We're even seeing economic announcements that's been made in the Commonwealth that have been put on hold because it's got a tie to China. But China is running right over top of us, leaps and bounds, by building coal-fired plants because they see the value in low-cost energy. They see the value in the reliable energy of coal. But if we want to look at this in a different perspective, let's talk about our kids and our grandkids. Let's talk about the families of all of those that are affected by coal. KU has made billions and billions of dollars on the backs of coal miners and families in our community. Again, when I say that this Commonwealth has been built on coal, there's no question. Look to your right and look to your left. You're going to see it. But the issue is we're going to do away with coal-fired plants, and we're going to go with natural gas. Look at your home gas bills right now. Because of the demand of gas is up, because we're switching everything to natural gas, guess what happens to your gas bill at home? It's skyrocketing. Look at what's happening to the utility rates. Right now, the Madisonville utilities is about 14% lower than KU and about 20-something% lower than Kenergy. We're not using all natural gas powered plants. We have to have the diversification. If you don't, then you're going to be stuck, as we've heard, with what you get. And what you get's not what you want. I thank you. Listen, you're appointed, and we heard that, but you didn't have to say yes. You're in a no-win situation, and I know how you feel because I'm the mayor of Madisonville. I'm a public official. I'm the same guy that walks on the street next to my neighbors that's also on social media because I made somebody mad because we're getting a coffee shop. You're in the same boat, and I understand that. But when we're looking at our kids and our grandkids, and we're looking into our future, and we're looking into that 300 plus years of reliable resources that our Commonwealth has, I agree with everyone else. It's time for Kentucky to stand up. It's time for not only our legislators, but our governor to stand up and support coal. Because if he really wants to look into the deep pockets of Commonwealth, I bet there's a tie to coal. Because the Commonwealth has been built off of coal. It's been built off the backs of the people in this room. My grandfather was a coal miner. My uncles were all coal miners. If you've never, how many of you have been in a coal mines? I would encourage you to go down into the coal mines. See what they're dealing with now, because they have went leaps and bounds for safety, to make sure that everybody goes home, to make sure that they're producing the cleanest coal possible, so that when it's burning in those coal-fired plants, it meets all the EPA regulations. They're going above and beyond. Go to the scrubber, walk through it. They'll show it to you. Yes, sir. Thank you.
My name's Gene Kerner. I live at 101 Hunt Road, Marion, Kentucky. I'm a proud coal miner. I work with a wonderful family of Alliance Coal, Riverview Coal. I've heard a whole lot of stuff, statistics I don't know. That's over my head. I'm so country boy, third generation miner. I know if it affects our jobs, it's going to affect other people's jobs. We stop at gas stations every day. We go to restaurants every day. We buy cars. We go buy food. We buy clothes. It's going to affect our whole industry. It's going to affect our whole state. We just recovered from COVID, and businesses are now just starting to thrive a little bit. So why would we want to knock them back down and us be without jobs, be without, Happy Meals and all that's went up? You don't be able to tell your kid, I can't take you here, your grandkid, because the utility industry want to go to a different route where it's going to cost you more to pay bills. They're high enough. I want you to take in consideration the welfare of the people of Kentucky, what coal does every day in our industry, what it does for us, what it does for our community. I'll just leave you with this. I just asked that the good Lord will just touch both of you and lead, guide, and direct you in the right decision that you'll make for the state of Kentucky.